Exactly, right? Please have it. Yeah, just put it on the floor or something, right? Ja, lige nice. Så fint. Foran, Carsten. Foran. Photo up.
Ja,
photo up. Yeah, it's very important. Exactly. Okay, we are settling in. Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's do a raise hands. How many know what is the diversity commitment? Okay, approximately 50%. It's not super, but very important information for us here up on stage to make sure that everyone is included and know where we are. So I had the pleasure just half an hour ago to be standing on another stage where we spoke with Kasper Hultin from Pecan and Podio, Sarah Josephine from Canopy Lab, both of them been through intense scaling journeys. Sarah Josephine a year and a half ago were 10 people. Today they're 70 and they're in 80 different markets. Kasper with Pecan went from 0 basically, or 4 founders, and then moved on to 300 and something people. And the final comment on that panel with those people and those founders was, you guys, you don't know what's going to hit you when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kasper has lived in the US, he has been a manager in the US, and the amount of policies, requests, cultural differences, you ain't seen nothing yet, Denmark. So I think both from us as a society, but also you as a founder, this panel will hopefully be able to help you guys take the next steps going forward. Today, we focus upon the investors and the investment processes. Thank you for being here. And then I've been told that this stage is a little bit difficult to hear what we're saying. So could we do a raise arms again? Can you hear me? Great, thank you. So on to our panel. Can you please introduce yourself and part of course, your organization? Who are you? But also, what is the most important goal of the diversity commitment to your organization? Perfect. Can we start with you, Sidsel?
Yes, hello. My name is Sidsel Hougaard. I'm Vice President for Entrepreneurship and Startups in Innovation Fund Denmark. For those of you who does not know Innovation Fund Denmark, we are a public fund investing soft money in entrepreneurs, in companies, in researchers, in knowledge-based entrepreneurship in Denmark in general. And diversity is one of the top agendas on strategic agendas in Innovation Fund Denmark. And that's one of the reasons that we have signed the diversity commitment.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Carsten Salling. I'm a general partner and investment manager in Dreamcraft Ventures, formerly known as Bumble Ventures. We are an early stage VC fund on our first fund at the moment, potentially a second fund next year. Our sweet spot is seed stage, but we also invest very early in pre-seed companies. Geographically, our focus is the Nordics, but also Germany. And if really interesting cases pop by, we also make exceptions there. We are a generalist fund, but we do have some track record and a lot of passion for certain themes. One of them is B2B SaaS. It's also direct to consumer. It is consumer technology. It is iGaming, gaming, esports. And then as of yesterday, where we launched our decarbonization thesis, we are also investing in that theme. And there, both software and hardware. We signed up to the diversity commitment because we think it's very, very important. I have a background, 9 years in Maersk, 9 years in the army. The army was not very diverse. Maersk was very diverse. And now I feel in the startup environment that I'm back in the army. And I know that high-performing teams, they need to be diverse. And therefore, this is an important issue for us to address.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my name is Liva, Echwald. I'm the founder of the NGO Found Diverse. That's an umbrella for different co-initiatives to make the startup ecosystem more diverse. And I'm also the co-founder of the company Intentional. Now I'm pointing to my co-founder Stine over here because she plays a very important role in what we're going to talk about today. because one of the collab initiatives in the NGO Foundiverse is the diversity commitment. And why did we venture into doing this, and why is that so important? I think the most important thing about the diversity commitment is the fact that there are so many important players that were willing to sit around a table and be eager to go into that conversation of formulating the common goals on diversity, and that you stood next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, signing the commitment. That's basically what I find some of the most important parts and element for it to succeed.
That's cool. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm really happy that I read your LinkedIns and bios in advance, because I think the question or the issue that people have had this stage in between, so you guys, you can obviously hear what the four of us are saying. Great, good for you. I can barely hear what you are saying. So I think for our sake, maybe let's try to speak up, and then hopefully we will also blow our audience away, both visually, but now also on an auditive basis. And I'm a very visual person, and I can't have this, so I'm just going to move this a little bit, because I think it's going to look much nicer here. Great. So we're going to start with Liva. 50% of you guys know what the diversity commitment is all about. Great. But maybe you don't know why, and maybe you also don't know what have Liva and her team done to actually help the investors on the other side reach the goals. So, if you could get a bit of the background, also what is it for the ones who didn't know, but then also the why and what have you helped with?
So my co-initiative maker, Stina, and I, we set out to dive into this, the issues of what is needed for more women to start and scale their own business, stumbling upon quite some numbers. So what is the problem today is that the distribution of funding, venture funding, is in 2020, it was 95% was invested in male-only founding teams, 4% where it's mixed, so men and women together, and 1% in female-only founding team. And then you could ask yourself, why is that a problem? Well, and here are the surveys around the startup founders indicates that around 20 to 25% of our startup founders are female. Then you might see that the numbers are quite not as equal as it could be. And here the problem is, of course, from the founder's perspective, getting access to capital is key to scale. And solve a problem in the world, we need multiple different type of people solving the problems, since the problems are also diverse. So here's kind of a problem both from the founder side, society side, but also the fact that the numbers show that the investors are leaving deals at the table unintentionally with we all humans, biased behavior is both men and women. Sometimes we can be blindsided by all kinds of elements and structures, and that was leaving deals on the table, women not having access to capital, and problems not being solved in a scalable manner. And on the other side, that potential of okay, if 20 to 25% of our founders that are female, we are losing out on talent, right? The potential of tapping into that pool of talent is immense. Tapping into diversity, as you mentioned from Maersk, diverse teams outperform mono teams. The innovation that comes with diversity, the new markets, new solutions coming to market, all of that potential is, of course, part of the reason you were sitting there as well. And the solution, as we saw it, Stina and I, this is a structural problem. It's not try to fix the women, try to fix the men. It is a structural problem. Thus, you need like-minded peers to go in and say, okay, how can we together, create that structural change from early investment to late investment. That was kind of the purpose with gathering everyone around the table. And the goals as such is then formulated out of an intention of, it's not about minimum of women, kind of, sorry for the women, but, extra for them, but more of it's all about max of the same, right? How much can you have a max of the same in your portfolio, in your team, in management, in your boardroom, to basically avoid group thinking, right? And get access to that innovative thinking. And that's when you look into the goals, it's formulated based on max 80% of new investment invested into male-only teams, rather than minimum amount of money invested in female-founded as such. Yeah, and then we can dive into the goals and go into that. But I think maybe
I like that difference.
And
if we're going to stick to the why of the diversity commitment, maybe you could add, Sidsel, why did you sign? And you guys are obviously coming up next.
I think Liva just argued very well why it is important to focus on diversity. But what I would like to add is, as I mentioned before, Innovation Fund Denmark is a public, it's an early stage investor. And as such, I think we have a privileged position, but also an important responsibility to show leadership in this agenda and have others to follow, to be part of this movement, to push the ecosystem in the right direction. And then I think we might even need to be even more ambitious than the goals set up in the diversity commitment, because we are this early stage investor, and it's our responsibility to create a diverse pipeline or deal flows for the later investors.
Yes. Yeah. For us, it boils down to the high-performing teams, and for us that comes from diversity of thought overall, and diversity of thought comes from diversity in gender, in culture, in education, these kinds of things. So those I actually consider as the leading indicators. What I want internally in our team is the diversity of thought, and same as in the founders that we invest in. So we are called Dreamcraft because we invest in dreamers, and we invest in crafters because that's what good startups need. And they think very diverse. I mean, the dreamer, he looks up and forward. The crafter looks down and inward. And that is required. It also requires to be successful in that, because the diversity of thought inherently creates friction. That friction needs to be managed by great leaders. And then you can really achieve amazing things from an innovation point of view, from a financial point of view, etc. And that's why we, so to say, have made this commitment and are starting to, so to say, eat the elephant in small pieces by focusing on the gender diversity.
I wonder if your name, Dreamcraft Ventures, actually also explains why is it you and not your partner Daniel who sits in the chair today, because several people have asked me, Carsten, but isn't it Daniel who was part of the discussions, and isn't he the one who sat in on it? And then it's this Carsten guy that they put up on stage. And I guess, I don't know if you're not a dreamer, but Daniel has taken the first steps, but you're the implementer, you're the craftsman. Is that?
There could be some truth in that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And again, maybe that is also why we so far collaborate very well and are having good progress, is because Daniel and I are very diverse. Just like Jesper and Christian, who founded Dreamcraft and also founded Better Collective, are very diverse. Jesper being the dreamer, Christian being the crafter.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So if anyone's in doubt, it's because that Carsten is the one responsible for implementing the commitment. Hence, that's why we have the pleasure of his company today. You opened a little bit about ambitions, and maybe we could be even more ambitious. You were, at least you were, in the room while the talks took place. What do you think happened? How come that you did not? For example, we went on stage with these lovely umbrellas, right? Symbolizing diversity in its broadest sense, yet the diversity commitment focuses in particular upon gender only. And of course, it's so much more. Why did it not happen, Sidsel?
Well, actually, I was not in the discussion.
Yeah.
So sorry for that. But I think it's because I guess it's a starting point, and it's starting at a realistic level for all the players in the ecosystem. And then, as I said before, I think signing the commitment is also to giving ourselves a commitment to incrementally work on the different gender parameters, both in terms of gender, subject area, ethnicity, age, and that's what we are doing in Innovation Fund Denmark. At least diversity is not only about gender. It's a starting point for this commitment, but I think also the ambition is to move further from that. But I think Liva, you are the right one to answer that question.
But actually, I would like to continue with you because I'm wondering, being this privileged yet with responsible public institution. Okay, I'm going to start elsewhere. Sorry. So if something is important, we measure it and we track and we keep ourselves updated upon it. And I'm sure you must also have some KPIs as a public institution. And my impression is that the public institution is very focused upon gender, less so upon the other aspects of diversity. Do you think that affected the outcome of the commitment?
Oh, then again, I haven't been part of the process, so it's difficult for me to answer that question. But I can answer for our organization. Yes, it's true that in terms of diversity, we have a specific focus on gender, but we also have a specific focus on academic disciplines, on subject areas. So that are the two main aspects that we are focusing on in Innovation Fund Denmark.
And there's no other KPIs. There's ethnicity or anything beyond.
Ethnicity, age, no, we're not that focused on that, not directly at least. Geography is another focus area. Geography within Denmark.
Yeah, within
mainly,
the regions, right, exactly. Sometimes at these panelists, or when you're in a new group, you discuss more about why are you not in Aarhus versus Copenhagen, then why are we not in, New York, or, celebrating or kind of competing or comparing ourselves. Sorry, that's a different discussion. I'll stop it right here and move on to you, Carsten. You had something to add to the points.
No, I think so. A point on the outcome of the diversity commitment. I think so. Why are we focusing on gender initially? I mean, and why have we set the metrics as we have set it? I mean, as I recall the discussions while we were preparing it, the main focus. So when you set objectives, you always want them to be smart, right? And actually, the main discussions was on the R in smart, that it has to be realistic, right? So yes, we all want to have a more diverse, so to say, gender balance in the ecosystem. But we also need to be realistic in terms of how long time it will take. We cannot underestimate how long-term an effort this actually is. And if we set too high ambitions and then don't deliver, then we'll potentially lose, so to say, the motivation to proceed. So I think what we have said now is ambitious, but it's also realistic. And that was important in these discussions because the reality is, as a venture firm, investing private people's money and having promised them the best possible return you can give them, what we do as a firm, we engage with the entire ecosystem. We brand ourselves towards the entire ecosystem. On an annual basis, we are in dialogue with 700 to 800 startups. 700 to 800. This year so far, we have been in dialogue with 400 startups. Of those 400 startups, 75% is male-only teams. 75%. So it doesn't make sense to set a 50% target because that is not the reality out there. We had 20% mixed teams and 5% female-only teams.
Okay. Would you like to challenge that pipeline? Is it because they're not out there, the mixed founding teams?
Well, what we just hear here is actually a rather representative pipeline, right? There is in Denmark, if we just look at all our entrepreneurs, 26% of our entrepreneurs are women, and the other half is men. And then we don't know how they are actually mixed up That is what we are starting to actually start to document in this work. But what we see is that if 20% of our startup founders as minimum, maybe even 25, are women, we could argue that 75-25 is actually maybe a somewhat healthy distribution of what is out there. Yeah. Of course, and that's also part of this conversation is that not all numbers are known, right? Not all numbers are even know how many, investable, scalable, we talk to Dansk, statistic and whatnot. They can't answer that. No. So this is where, part of the commitment is measure, track, report yearly, publicly, to show like this is our deal flow, this is how we invest. If there's a big difference between what you see and what you invest in, then you got an issue, right? Yeah. If and that is also to be ambitious, realistic, right? Is the distribution of mixed team maybe is it really 50-50? No one knows, but we need to start somewhere. Yeah. So that is I would like to challenge it in the terms of could it become better over time? Yes. Is that what we see others that have tracked, which not all have done until now? Is that comparable to what we see in other investment firms of what they see? Those have tracked. That is rather close to the bullseye, right? So if what we see over 3 years is that your investment portfolio is split in that what you see and what you invest in, then we got a really grand change because you will hit above the target of the max 80% invested in male-only teams. So as such, this is based on the industry and what we see, not bad numbers. Could it become better? Oh yeah, and that's why we have Innovation Foundation and part of the committing partners also Danban that represent rather early investment of business angels. Of course, there's no one investing in Series A in unknown people. No. So it's it is a feeding chain as such. Yeah.
Maybe just a benchmark number on this discussion. So I noticed, I think it was last week, where numbers came out on this summer's Y Combinator batch. Yeah. As I recall, so Y Combinator is, I think, by most known as the most renowned accelerator on a global scale, and they are indeed global. I think it was 350 cases that came into this summer's batch of YC, and 12% were female founders. So there is potentially also an element of us actually doing well here in Denmark relative to rest of the world, because I think what I see right now is that it's around the 20% here in Denmark, not 12 for sure.
Yeah. Cool. And that I would love to challenge. Yeah, because that's an accelerator program. I would have loved to know in their pipeline who applied and who got in, because the criteria of accelerator programs today that influence who gets into the program. And so let's say we have in Denmark awesome accelerator programs that are university driven. You need to be a student. That kind of sets a limit of your age, somewhat natural. Yes. And where we see entrepreneurs that are women often start 30 to 50 years. They are most likely not students, right? So if a criteria like student could hit unintentionally on gender, then that's an issue, right? If there's a criteria, it must be software as a service, right? It could, unintentionally hit, in regards to gender or ethnicity or whatever you do. So these criteria of the programs, they influence. And here in Found Diverse, we also have another collab initiative, Leap Forward. You have to have, potential scalable business, international potential, an element of tech where we understand the broad understanding of tech, either in the core of your business or driving your business, and minimum one female founder in the founding team. There's 20 companies. So it's also the criteria you set influence what you see and what you get access to. Yeah.
And speaking of criteria and investment processes, just also in order for it to be a bit more specific, because hopefully someone amongst the audience can get inspired, but about what you guys are doing today and what have you changed in your processes or will change in your processes.
And we have actually been working quite a lot with biases, unconscious bias, and will continuously be working on biases, both in terms of our communication and with the applicants or the deal flow to try to attract a wider audience or a more diverse group of people, but also in the investment processes. So we have bias trained all our all the organization and members of the board, and we will also be bias training all our expert panels. And we've screened all our documents, or not all yet, but we are in the process to screen our guidelines for unconscious bias to be able to exactly attract a diverse group of people. So that's one thing we have been doing or will be doing in the future.
Yeah. And are you planning to follow up on the bias training? Because to my understanding, then once doing bias training, I guess a bit like also sales training, actually, you need to remind people. It's like, oh, that's right, we have a goal, eyes on the ball.
And that's exactly a great point, because I think our next step will be not only to have this bias training, but also to redesign all our investment processes to have this focus on bias, or to avoid the biases in the investment process. That we'll be looking into as the next step, I guess.
As next step. Cool. Your processes?
Yeah. So what we're doing is, in terms of implementing our KPI traction, is like most VCs, you have a relationship management tool where you manage relations with your investors, with your founders. Which tool do you use? We use a tool called Affinity.
Yeah.
So what we have done is, in Affinity, we have implemented the diversity metrics.
Yes.
So as soon as we get in dialogue with a case, we start logging the diversity metrics on gender so far, and that's why we have these numbers and are starting to build that. Then what has happened in the process for us as well? So an early stage VC and a first fund VC, we are a small team. We are 9 people now. Come November last year, we were obviously even fewer people, but until then, we were actually also a male-only team. Now we have 2 women in the team, which is obviously a significant benefit for us, because we start becoming more diverse ourselves. And what it means in practice is that all the communication we do externally, we have, so to say, a female filter on it. And what does that mean? It means something in terms of the words you put on your website. We've just rebranded and thought a lot about this. We also think about it when we post job applications, that they are not biased towards a certain gender in any way. And
do you know which tools you use for this?
So we don't use a tool.
No.
Right now it's very manual. But there is a fantastic tool that I would like to recommend is Develop Diverse. One of the great one of the great Danish female startups at home. And maybe just to mention another one and address the bashing on Y Combinator. And I'm not to defend them, but at least they found a very interesting Danish startup, female, so to say, only team, female invest, that was part of this batch with the 12%, and who is actually addressing the very problem we are talking about, because they are making a SaaS tool for females to become better at investing. So that's just to address this one.
It's totally fair.
And then the other point on getting women into our team, how it also helps us is when we then get in dialogue with a mixed team or with a female-only team, then we can suddenly now also make a mixed team on our side. And as we always work in couples on teams, so on cases, there will be a lead and there will be a wing. That obviously helps us in terms of avoiding any biases in the process if we have a mixed team from start to end.
Makes sense. In respect of time and also the questions, I'm gonna take the essence of some of your questions, because I see that we have several questions that goes beyond gender. For example, Dreamcraft, 4 male, white, youngish partners.
Yes.
And now you have 2 females, but I don't think, at least not since 2 days ago, that they are partners. So, and people are asking about, could you also look into, you mentioned your processes, right now it's gender only, right? Because again, if it's important, you track it. I need to report on this in a year from now. And you guys signed up to report on gender, so obviously you track upon gender. But people are asking about, what about like economic background? What about, again, beyond gender, ethnicity? And if you're using Affinity, I mean, majority of the information and data will be for you. So you adding, is this a mixed or not mixed founding team is a manual process, right? If you're doing that manually, you can pretty much tell, and this guy is Brazilian. Why are you not adding ethnicity already now, even though you don't have to?
So on that specific point, and it's actually already becoming a challenge as we are only focusing on gender. And that is, how will we report on all this without making it a reporting nightmare, especially for the founders. And that's also why I think it's so important that we, like all good startups, think big with the diversity commitment, but start small. And when it works, we scale fast. And currently, we need to nail it in terms of how we implement, how we do this on gender only. As a very specific example, we are also measuring within our portfolio companies gender. So are you a male? Are you a female? Are you non-binary? To prepare for this in our portfolio, we made a very simple type form where you had to answer these 3 questions. And I can tell we got 5 answers after a couple of reminders over the last couple of weeks. And we have more than 5 founders in our portfolio. So the appetite for doing this in the portfolio is not being considered important. So then just imagine if we were also to think the non-binary thing into the pipeline, where when you're in the pipeline, you're typically in dialogue with many investors, 20, 30, maybe even 50 investors. And if they all ask the same question the first time you meet them, then maybe you get a bit tired about answering this as a founder. And as an ecosystem, we need to find out, how will we address this? Will we capture this data centrally and have access to it, or is it happening decentrally?
Some examples going abroad. So I work with international investors, and a lot of them, because like you're saying, it's a matter of motivation, but also not like putting too much work on the founders. And I think the motivation of a founder who's in fundraising mode and is uploading their pitch deck, if there is a follow-up question about how is your founding team, most likely you'll add it. You'll find the time for that. And more of the international funds, at least, are doing this upfront. So I think, actually, if we did agree, well, we are going to ask that same question, all of us, then it's not going to be an issue and it's not going to be troublesome, because you've done the work already and it's the new standard. And yes, I am now also reporting not only on my KPIs and like financial performances, but also how is the mix of my founding team. Notion Capital, for example, has a really nice and simple also type form. It's a good tool. So that's a good way to look for inspiration. I'm looking. Oh God! Is it okay? Because I would just love to have one more question before we finish off. Audience before Carsten. I'm sorry.
It's absolutely fine.
So here, I think maybe people have been inspired by our umbrellas and fantasy, right? So they're saying, imagine if you had superpowers and could change one major factor in the terms of diversity. What would that be? And then, as the moderator, I'm going to add, thank you for that question, I love it. Could you mention 2 things? Something that would create structural change on the long term, and then also a tiny baby step that we could do today. Basically, maybe the entire audience could go out and do today at TechBBQ. So, if you had superpowers, could change not 1, but 2 major factors in terms of diversity. What would create long-term change, and what could change something everyone could do today? Do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the easy one. What could you do here at TechBBQ? Talk to someone that don't look like you. Right? Start that conversation, because maybe that's your next co-founder. You know, that could be awesome, right? So that's something you can do today.
Yeah, perfect. And long term?
And long term, we definitely need to solve this issue that Carsten is addressing here. That
the lovely lady over here is reminding me that we would love short answers.
Yeah, so that it becomes less manual, more easy to just get this information, so it's not difficult for the founders nor for the investors to just have that in one place. So it becomes common sense and the standard that it's being tracked and measured.
Perfect. Carsten.
Yeah.
So if I had superpowers, then on Monday, either a female-only team or a mixed team from Denmark would make an exit of a unicorn company. Because I think that would be what moves the needle.
Yeah.
Because you will have a tremendous role model that will inspire a lot of female founders females to become founders, and there will be capital to be reinvested back in the ecosystem.
Yes, thank you.
Well, just a small thing then about the biases. So remember yourself to question your own biases when you read the application, when you talk to the startups, etc., etc. I think that would be a place to start.
That's a good place to start. And something long term?
I haven't. Let's keep that for the next.
I took the long term, she took the short term. We made it very short.
There you go. But I assume you have kids. What do you do with your kids? Is there anything you've changed in the way that you're raising your kids today? And that can totally be a small thing, right? But kids is definitely long term.
But that's a really good question, and I think I'm not a good role model in that sense. I think I have both boys and girls, and I think they are. I'm not challenging enough actually the stereotypes for the genders. I could do that.
You could do that. My daughter, we need to walk off the stage, and then I can do a bit of talking on this. I have a 5-year-old daughter. She came home and she's like, "Do you want to be mom and dad?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I think actually they would appreciate if we took the umbrellas with us. Yes. And then it's like, "I want to be the dad," and she's like, "No, you can't be the dad." Why can't I be the dad? Well, because Ole says so, which is also 5 years old and her best friend in kindergarten. So I obviously had to challenge that. So I think small things that anyone could go out and do today. Another thing that someone could go out and do today is, and it's a point for the diversity, right? We need more recruitments. We need more talents to be attracted. And we also need the talent who do come here and manage to find their way to Denmark to have them stay. One of the main reasons that they leave is because they don't have any friends. They tell us that the Danes are polite and nice, but they don't want to have a true relationship with us. So I think my encouragement to you is befriend a Dane, right? As a Dane, go out and find yourself an international friend and get some new perspectives. Thank you.